The trigger is the doorway. The biggest trigger you have, that's your golden ticket to the beginning of your awakening and your inner peace. When you surrender to pain, it's not painful. It's actually really beautiful. I had an ego death. Well, congratulations. Good luck for the next 300. If you hear people saying healed, they don't know what they're talking about. Because each expansion will require rebalancing. We're so identified with the escape strategy that we don't even realize, aha, I'm triggered. That's my work now.
Ramzi Shahade is a pioneer in spiritual psychology. He is the founder of Global Molecule Awakening Guidance and understands in great detail the role of the ego in human behavior. While many attribute the surface expression of human behavior to the person, Ramzi's work unravels and communicates the roots of behavior in trauma. Having begun his spiritual awakening at only 20 years of age, Ramzi now has 27 years of experience of unraveling his mind and transforming his life from one of intense trauma, addiction, and conflict to a normal, healthy life. I hope you enjoy, guys. I would like to start with a quote of yours. You say, "Welcome to planet Earth. It's not an ice cream and bubble bath planet. It's a planet of transformation."
It's not an ice cream and bubble bath planet. Yeah, that was from a video some months back, wasn't it? Yeah, welcome to planet Earth. It's not an ice cream and bubble bath planet. I mean, it is partially, but we're living in the third dimension of consciousness, a mirroring of the unconscious mind, a space where trauma and dysfunction and distortion is manifest into reality. And while you want your bubble bath reality, and you're pointing your finger and rejecting and blaming everybody else for their input in your life, you don't understand the truth of our reality. Yes, bubble bath exists, but also your pain manifests into reality, and those are the people you most reject. That's why we have to draw awareness to the truth of the third dimension of consciousness, mirroring, what's the word I'm looking for? The law of attraction, mirroring, resistance, projection, how the ego works, our blocks, trauma, all of these things. Yeah. There's a lot more going on than meets the eye, as they say.
Yeah, so we tend to have this idea or fantasy of, like, we just want the ice cream and the bubble bath, but we reject whatever goes outside that.
Yeah.
But it sounds like
not actually us that rejects it. It's the ego that rejects it, and we're still identified with the ego. It's like a car on autopilot, and you don't realize you can turn off the autopilot and choose where it goes. So it's actually the lack of awareness of an automated self-preservation reaction in the ego that's rejecting it. And what that is that it's rejecting it in the mind and externally. I call this the double threat illusion, okay? So it's the threat to the identity within the mind, so the ego pushes it down, and then the projection onto the person as if you're the threat to me when you're actually the mirror to my wound. So we reject the external as the mind, the ego resists and rejects it within the mind. So it's happening both inwards in the mind and outside in this, bubble bath and ice cream reality. So it's for us to learn how that operates, which is what consciousness is. Consciousness is an awareness of the mental mechanism. I'm projecting. I'm in resistance. I must be protecting a wound. Instead of just blindly rejecting and dismissing people, which is unconsciousness. That's the ego. It's not the person. It's just unconsciousness.
So you were saying it happens within the mind and then externally, but it sounds like it does not have to happen externally. It will happen in the mind because of the automated programs, but then it sounds like you have the choice whether it actually manifests externally or not.
You have to develop enough awareness. Yeah, you have to develop enough awareness to not play out the automated stuff, pattern, self-preservation, coping strategy, whatever it is. Which means allowing whatever is happening around you to happen and not being reactive, because the reaction is the ego's self-preservation, blocking them, blocking yourself, maintaining a reality, maintaining a delusion, maintaining a block, whatever it's doing. So by not being reactive, you start to fall in slowly into a felt-based reality instead of a anti-feeling automated self-preservation reaction. Now you're choosing space where you can feel, which is what the block, the self-preservation was protecting you from. Very uncomfortable feelings. It can be guilt, it can be shame, it can be anger, whatever it is. It can even be crying. So you played out this movie your whole life that kept you safe and away from these feelings. But that proliferation of unconscious reactivity is what's maintaining the life that you don't actually want anymore. It's the life that you can see isn't quite right, because you've still got intuition. You've still got a level of awareness that can sense something's up. Why is it up? Because it's not you. It's your patterns. So from that, we can get, I mean, if you look at me, for example, the amount of conflict I had plenty of opportunities to practice. And most people in toxic relationships or any sort of challenges in their life, these things are coming up quite a lot. And it's getting louder and it's getting more obvious. You might start to get physical pain, some sicknesses, or your business failing, or your marriage getting to the brink. And that's when you have to start going, okay, this is getting really bloody obvious now that something's going on, and it's not only outside. It's me generating it. But the bit that fools most humans is that the mirror to your pain can look pretty scary. It can look pretty aggressive. It can look quite unsavory. So it's so easy for the ego to project onto it, when in fact it's for you to see your patterns when that information comes to you. How do you react to that? Because that's your way of avoiding feeling what's coming in, which tends to be guilt and shame, guilt and shame, guilt and shame. It's always coming up, because when people are desperate, they project guilt and shame to feel more superior, to get out of their inadequacy. And it's how children get attention when they scream and cry. It's using these body mechanisms, these reactions to get attention. So we need to deconstruct our reactivity by becoming aware of it. Okay, there it is again. Somebody's yelling and screaming, or somebody's doing whatever it is they're doing that keeps repeating in my life. I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to stop. Breathe. And I can feel my body shaking. I use a couple of examples all the time. One of them is like getting caught stealing a chocolate bar when you're a little kid. Like, oop, you know, it's like, they got me. That's guilt, but on a very minor and quite innocent level. And that's the kind of guilt we're talking about when it comes to triggers and vulnerability and intimacy and facing yourself, facing your blocks. And shame. Shame and guilt are associated every single time with lowering your defenses, because you're stepping into uncertainty, vulnerability. Now, instead of reacting defensively from your ego, you can start to communicate. I can see that you're in distress. Would you like to tell me what it is you're feeling or what you need? Something like this, to break out of your automated reactivity, because that's not you. And if you keep reacting, and they keep input, reaction, you never leave this level of existence. That's where you reside. So you have to become the observer of that and say, right, I keep doing that every time they do that. So now I'm going to choose something different. I'm going to slow down. I'm just going to ask a question. I'm going to be vulnerable. I'm going to open up. I'm going to lower my defenses. I'm going to say, hey, what's up? Are you okay? Do you need me? Do you need something? And you'll find that most people have no effing idea what they need or what they're feeling. It's really hard to work out. That's training. Vulnerability, lowering defenses, emotional intelligence, authentic expression, boundaries, non-violent communication. There's so much. It's already out there if you want to grow, if you want to evolve. But as long as somebody does ABC and you always do XYZ, you're not going to understand your suffering. You're not going to understand why you're stuck in that dynamic perpetually for decades. So yeah, deconstruct your automated reactions into a space of awareness, and then come in with something different. If that doesn't work, if they keep pointing the finger and blaming and screaming, for this example, now you have to learn your boundary, right? Okay, now I'm open. I've chosen to connect instead of defend. Great first step. Now, am I seen? Am I safe? Can this person see me? Because if you just keep arguing with someone your whole life, hoping that they've got the answer that you're screaming for, you're delusional. You don't even know if they have it. So you're screaming and shouting. They don't have it. So if you ask them, kindly, what is it you're feeling, what you need. You find out if this person, A, if they're interested in finding out what they need or feeling, or if they're just yelling and screaming. And from this, you can decide what your next move is. And it could be a boundary and to remove yourself from the conversation. And now you're learning how to navigate this ice cream and bubble bath reality consciously based on what you're feeling with a boundary. Whereas as a child, you couldn't do that. You had to block it off, smile at mummy and daddy, pretend you're happy, and develop all of these coping strategies to navigate around your truth. And that's the patterns that are creating these toxic dynamics in your adult life, because it's showing you if you keep living by these survival patterns, it's creating toxicity. That's not who you really are. So yeah, that's a good start. We're diving in fast and deep and good.
Diving deep, yeah. So when it comes to the way you respond to one of these triggers, it sounds like, would you say that the ego sometimes confuses self-respect for what's actually just as you say in your words, a reflex self-preservation reaction of the ego?
What do you mean by self-respect? How do you mean, how can it confuse self-respect?
Yeah, so sometimes if someone does something that triggers you, then the ego will automatically be like, oh, that person did that and that's right. And then, oh, well, if they're doing that, then I'm not doing that kind of thing. And I feel like the ego will trigger itself within another person. And I think sometimes it can feel like, oh, well, I'm just, they did that, so it's only right that I'm doing that. But really, you're just acting from the ego.
Yeah, that sounds quite unconscious to me. Doesn't sound like much fun. Tit for tat, we call that in English. But if you're justifying your behavior based on somebody else's behavior, that's completely outsourced. That's completely unconscious. That's not autonomous. That's not intentional, like conscious intentional. That's not a way to exist. It's reactionary. It's antagonistic. You did that, so now I can do this. No, that's unconscious, unconscious paradigm.
Okay, so it sounds like in order to navigate this not quite exclusively ice cream and bubble bath planet, you need to really take full responsibility for everything that you feel, even or especially when you feel triggered by something or someone.
Yeah, we need to learn. It's a journey. It's like I had a lot of support and it took a lot of time to get to where I am with my level of emotional intelligence and autonomy. My brother is my main guide. He's what you might call an empath, He has amazing abilities of seeing me as my brother. And took him 1 month every single day while I was just complaining about my girlfriend to understand that I was in the victim mindset. Because all I was doing was complaining about her. And he kept asking me, what are you feeling? I thought, what do you mean, what am I feeling? She's this, she's that, she's this, she's that, she did this, she did that. What are you feeling? Rah, 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 rah. And I was just pure rage, pure anger the whole time. It's like, oh, right. And now, many years later, the final piece of the puzzle, it's about accountability. Like, if you're not good, don't stick around complaining. I wrote a quote a long time ago saying, complaint is the expression of the inability to do what's right for yourself in a situation that's not serving you. Complaint is an expression of powerlessness. It's like, I'm powerless to remove myself from this. Why? Well, there's guilt blocks, there's shame blocks, there's loneliness, there are abandonment wounds, there's grief. All of these reasons why we don't move away. So, yes, we need to learn through our triggers, by the way. The trigger is the doorway. And I was just thinking that before I was coming here to make the video. It's like, The biggest trigger you have, like that one where you just want to smash the house down, when you can't believe your dad is such a blah blah blah, or your brother or your girlfriend or your mom's that massive trigger, that's your golden ticket to the beginning of your awakening and your inner peace. That major one, because you've got more. My awakening was quite full on for 2 years. But the first trigger was my father doing his thing. I'd been traveling for 15 years. As the story always goes, life will take care of your awakening. It took me home. Everything I had was gone. My way of traveling and my business, my van, finished. I had no money. And there I was in London, in the family home for the first time in 15 years, facing my stuff. And when my brother managed to get me to sit with the pain of the father trigger, I'm not going to tell you the story of what happened. It's quite simple, but the trigger was huge. After 15 years of travel, sex, sunsets, party, performance, living the dream 99% of the people watching this podcast still haven't done, which is taking full responsibility for your freedom. Even if you don't know what you're doing, just going, I'm not going to work anymore. I don't want to pay taxes. This is a waste of my life. I'm just going to go on a shoestring with a guitar. I'm going to find myself out there. I did all of that. But when I got back, nothing had changed, man. And I'd done some healing. I'd done some releasing. I'd done a lot of awareness. I'd transformed a little bit. I was conscious. I woke up at the age of 20. But the real stuff, the reason why you leave, the reason why you don't want to see your parents or live in their home or stay in your country, and you blame it on the weather, you blame it on your dad, it's your pain, it's your perception, it's your expectations, it's all of your stuff. And that first trigger with my father helped heal so much of the reason why I had conflict and rage in my life. So much. Because it's just that trigger in you that somebody needs to be a certain way for you to feel safe, for you to feel happy. That we can't see people for who they really are. And that's one of the biggest mistakes people make with their parents. They can't see that the parent can't see them. They're exactly the same. They think the parent, my parents, they don't understand this, they don't understand this, they don't understand this. Well, you don't understand really that they really can't understand this. They can't understand that. You have this vision, this illusion that they need to be this certain person because you were a child. And you needed to believe that they have all of this. They don't. So these triggers, these are the major, massively important processes to reintegrate your emotions in very intense ways by not kicking and screaming when these triggers come to you, but by just lying down. This is my pain, this trigger. I call them inner earthquakes for a reason, man. It's a fucking earthquake. It's a tremor. You just want, That's your resistance to your own stuff. So if you stop resisting it and sit with your triggers when your girlfriend does this, when your brother does that, when your father does this, and just stop reacting and just breathe into it slowly, you're going to start to see that you're no longer a puppet to outside behaviors and inputs. Excuse me. You can feel without reacting because you've learned to sit with the trigger. And now you can see the world happening around you more like a movie instead of something where everything says something about me, which is an outsourced, externalized, child version of reality, which most adult humans are still adult children. They haven't had this coming of age yet. That's not a competition or superiority, it's just the way it is. How can you become an adult just by growing into an adult body when your circuitry that's controlling your reality was formed through childhood survival and your patterns of defense? So to break out of survival into this feeling world, to take accountability and have autonomy, you need to go through your triggers, you need to go through your patterns, your reactivity, your coping, all of it. Slowly, one bit at a time, unraveling it, and then going, okay, so if that's not me, who am I? How do I respond to this? And slowly figuring it out. And you need a support team. You need to do research. So yeah, you said it like it's, we all need to do it and we need to do it right now. It's a life journey. So I want people to know that. When I do my one-on-one calls, I give a lot of information. It's like, yeah, but this is just laying out the This is laying out the field, but you're going to walk through it for decades, gradually making sense out of this.
And with regards to triggers, let's say that you begin spending time with these triggers and allowing them to sort of burn out within you. Would you say that then your beliefs about yourself, about life, would automatically then change?
Mm-hmm.
Because you do say that there are a lot of defenses that are protecting you from your pain and designed to get you to not feel that pain. And
do you know the secret? It's not actually pain. It's not even pain. It's just a blocked emotion, an unwanted emotion. They're deep, they're dark, and they're heavy. Pain is actually really inaccurate. Pain is resistance. Pain is the lack of acceptance. Pain is it's the fight. And of course, there are some serious pains. If you've been through intense abuses, or if you've been violated seriously, sexually or physically, there is a deeper side to healing there, of agony, releasing agony, wailing, crying so deeply, but still I wouldn't call it pain. That's a very interesting point. I call it's just unwanted. It's dark, it's heavy, it's dense, but we'll call it pain just for people to relate to it. But when you surrender to pain, it's not painful. It's actually really beautiful. It's really beautiful. So go on. So you want people to when the trigger burns out, I like the way you put that. I would say circulate it, allowing it to circulate until it settles. So what you're doing is you're creating a safer environment for an emotion or a state to be present in your body without an egoic self-preservation reaction taking over, to project that energy in other places through blame, self-preservation, pointing the finger, judgment, addictions, avoidance, escapism. Because we're always looking everywhere else except here. And it's so bloody simple once you get it. But you need someone, because I call it the hardest simple thing. Because it's really simple. But it's so hard to recognize that you're in that state, and that's what you need to do, because the story that you did this, you're an asshole, what about that? I need to get on my phone, and I need to smoke another joint, I need to go online and buy loads of stuff. All of this erratic behavior seems real. Seems like that's what's going on. But we're so identified with the escape strategy that we don't even realize, aha, I'm triggered. That's my work now. Okay, put that all down and be with myself. Because that's the hardest thing, is to recognize that you're in a triggered state and you need to be with yourself. What was the rest of your question based on that? Because I jumped in.
It was about beliefs, because I've heard that beliefs they obviously guide your behavior, and if I'm wondering if perhaps some beliefs form deliberately just to protect us, or to ensure that you do not wind up in a situation where that feeling might be triggered.
Sure. I'm not the best on belief systems. It does make sense. I'm not the best with belief systems. My mind is doing its thing. So I will ask a question one day and then I'll get a ping answer another day. And I'll become aware of that. Oh yeah, I remembered when I was younger that I didn't want this because I associated it with that. So I go through belief systems sometimes. All I've found, I went from pretty bloody lost at the age of 37 to where I'm at now at 47, without ever really focusing on belief systems, just focusing on the pain is mine, the resistance is mine, the emotion is mine, the perspective is mine. And then I don't really think I operate from belief systems anymore. Maybe there's a few more behind the scenes, but like I said, it's not really my forte, belief systems. But I'm pretty sure if you're doing the work, your belief systems will surface and they will just fizzle away. You will see them and say it's not even relevant anymore, because all it is a mental association or a mental interpretation of your block. So it's protecting. It's probably just protecting the thing. But like I said, it's not really my forte. So you've got me there.
Sure. Okay. So then, when it comes to feeling the trigger through and allowing it to be, when we do that, you've said previously, the closer you get, or the further you walk outside of the perimeter of the ego, the louder the defenses get. So
no, the closer
the more
you get,
we dive,
the closer you get to the edge, not beyond it, the edge.
yeah,
But carry on.
right. Yeah, so the more we dive into the, I won't say pain, the uncomfortable feelings, the stronger the defenses of the ego will become.
Precisely. Imagine if
right.
you're getting too close to the edge of a huge cliff, and it's really windy, and it's a 60-meter drop. You're going to start to get fear, and you're going to start to get doubt, right? And you're going to take a little tiny step forward. You're like, what the am I doing? Step back, get back. Same principle. Self-preservation is for the body, the identity, and the worldview. It's the same thing. That's why if you argue two religions, it gets violent, it gets nasty, because they're triggering that edge of the ego. What's beyond my worldview? Uncertainty, new concepts. This is the same space that parachuters are playing with. They're playing with the edge. Like, I'm going to jump out of a plane where in normal life you would die. But they've got a parachute on their back. So they're messing with that edge, and they're calling it no fear. And when they land, it's all full of dopamine and serotonin, all these feel-good hormones. But when you do it with your emotions, when you lower down your defenses into vulnerability, which is a skill that what you might call the narcissistic person really needs to learn, but will struggle very much so to do so, because they will associate shame and guilt with major suffering. Like lowering the defenses, nah, not going to happen. The safety, it's very misunderstood. But instead of getting the dopamine and serotonin high from the jumping out of the airplane with a parachute on your back, when you jump over the edge in the ego with your triggers and your personal narrative, you land in guilt, you land in shame, you land in distress, you land in the unresolved trauma. So that's the thing with the edge, and it's going to get louder and louder and louder. Step back, step back, step back, to protect your identity. So this is the trick with self-preservation and awakening. When it comes to your physical body, you want to listen to that fear. But when it comes to your emotional blocks, you don't. So if you're getting too close to danger and your body starts throwing up defenses, what are you doing? Step back, doubts, mental stories, fears, because that's the clue, that's what they are. You take a step back to protect your physical being. But when you're in a dispute or a difficult situation with your partner or your parent or something like this, you can actually choose to just lower your defenses, to say, I'm in defense mode. I'm pushing. Is that right? Wait a minute. I'm just going to lower my defenses. I'm going to open. I'm going to say, I'm feeling really sad that we're arguing like this. And I would love it if we can find a peaceful and loving way of bringing resolution to this. Now what you've done is you've walked onto the battlefield and put your sword down. You're not fighting, hey, get out of my house, you, I hate you, you're always talking to me like this, rah, 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 which is the ego, fighting, protecting. It's self-preservation. Looks not very nice, but all it is the person saying, I don't feel safe, I don't recognize my own emotions, I don't understand how to do vulnerability, I don't know how to express myself as an adult. That's all you're really saying, but it looks like rage or anger. So by lowering your defenses, you leave yourself wide open, like what we were talking about before. And from there, you can navigate consciously. You have to break out of these automated interactions. And yes, you need to be able to get so close to the edge of the ego that your mind is spinning all the doubts, all the fears, especially when it comes to speaking authentically, like telling somebody no if you're a people pleaser, or being vulnerable if you're a rage expert, like a more narcissistic person. Just to step out of your known, the protected, and lower those defenses, and then the ego's going to go mad. Everyone's had it. Everyone's had it where there's somebody they're living with where they just want to say, I don't want to do that right now, or I don't like that. I wish that would stop. And they just can't speak it. That's when you're at the edge. And then they're spinning stories. I wish I'd said that. Oh my God, blah, 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 blah. That's the rumination. That's the same edge of the ego that's protecting your identity. I am not somebody who says no. I'm not somebody who speaks up for himself. Or I'm not somebody who's sensitive and has feelings. It's just protecting that. So by recognizing the fear and doubt in the mental realm, you know you're going the right way. You know you've got to keep going. And whatever it was you intuitively knew or felt that you have to say or do, that you do it. Simple as that. That's why people say fear is false evidence appearing real. Because it's just it's a distraction. It's a decoy.
Yeah, and we often react from it and do essentially what it tells us to do.
We become it, exactly.
Allow it, and
yeah. It's called identification. If you can't see it, you identify with it, and that's the unconscious paradigm. Identification. So you identify with the fear. You identify with the idea that you're this or that. It's just an idea. It's just an identity. It's not who you are. It's not what you are.
So really, you want to walk right into all your triggers and allow everything that happens in your body. The more uncomfortable, the better for your growth.
Just what I say with processes is recognize them when they come. That's it. Just recognize them when they come. You can't chase it. Can't choose it. You just live in your life. Triggers, in my process, they always catch you off guard. Especially when you're having one of those nice days. It's like, you, and boom, from left field, whack. Recognize it. That's your priority now. That's it. That's your work. That's your work. That I'm going to take this feeling and I'm going to lie down.
So would you say...
Cool, jump in.
I was going to say, on a more practical side, let's say someone's like, okay, this resonates. I want to take care of my stuff. I want to take responsibility for everything that happens inside me. I want to go through all the processes life invites me to go through. What's your... what would you advise in terms of... because on the one hand, you would probably say, make it a priority and spend ample time with all the feelings that come up. And at the same time,
when it happens, but
I'm sure, I mean,
when it happens, make it a priority, but don't make it your whole life devoted to this. Have a life. Live your life. You do your art. Cook, go for walks, enjoy yourself. But when you get triggered, that's your priority.
Gotcha. So, and maybe actually creating a life that you love, and really making that an intention would be very much complementary, I suppose. Because if you're spending time in the trenches of just these really uncomfortable emotions that come up, at least having a life that you're like, oh, I'm excited by this I'm doing and that I'm doing, then I suppose that would help with the process.
Sure. It depends what kind of life you lived before. But you're going to restructure your life anyway. If you genuinely sit with your pain, your unwanted emotions, your triggers, time and again, you're going to see a lot of restructuring in your life. That's part and parcel, because you're going to unravel some much deeper sensitivities. You're going to be spending a hell of a lot more time with yourself. Certain things are not going to appeal anymore. There's a clear restructuring in our lives. And personally, my processes were so fatiguing. So once I sat with the trigger, I was knocked out for 2 weeks, 3 weeks sometimes, couldn't move. My awakening process, like the integration period, was long for each trigger. And it was months in when I Googled chronic fatigue and spirituality. For some reason, it doesn't have the same effect now when I do it. But in 2017, I Googled chronic fatigue and spirituality because I was conscious. I knew something was going on, but process after process after process, unable to move, like fully fatigued, fully sensitive, fully knocked out. And then after 2 or 3 weeks, after whatever happens, it's a longer story, when you finally meet it, basically, when you stop resisting it, you stop resisting the trigger, and then you get a healing process called integration, right? Where you're going to be mega sensitive. Personally, I was knocked out, super, super knocked out. And every day you wake up wishing it would just pass, wishing it would go. And eventually you stop wanting it to go and you start meeting it. And once you've made that connection, it lifts eventually. And you're learning how to love yourself in your darkness, these heavy, heavy periods. And anyway, so I Googled it. I was like, there's something spiritual going on here. And he described the awakening process so perfectly. Mine was textbook. Nothing special. Textbook. You will find yourself at home for the first time in years, without a penny in the bank, facing everything that no longer serves you. If you're lucky, you'll have just enough energy to take a short walk a day, etc., etc., etc. And I said, that's my life. This is an awakening. What are you talking about? I was never into the spiritual scene, but somewhere in my delusional mind, awakening was about growing angel wings and falling in love with everything. And to a degree, and for some people, there's part of it in the earlier stages of waking up. Woohoo, I'm alive, I'm a human, self-actualization, I can go anywhere, I can do this, I can do that. It's nice, but the true awakening is super intense. So it's really important to recognize that if you're sitting with a trigger properly, you're really meeting it, you may find yourself seriously fatigued afterwards, seriously, like knocked out. I just speak from my own experience. And that's a period of integration where the mental block that was the fuel for your reactivity, for your unconscious behavior, that mental block has now been overcome through consciousness. And that same mental block was manifested in the physical body as density, as a physical block. So when you start to work through your mental blocks, the body will automatically start to release the physical block. The physical body is the mirror to the mind. That's something that all Eastern medicines and Chinese medicine, homeopathy, acupuncture, Thai massage, they all know this. So if you're doing the work and you're finding yourself super fatigued, there's nothing wrong with that. You're not depressed. You're not sick. That's something that's really important to know on the healing and the awakening journey, is that the chronic fatigue after a trigger that you've met is integration. And that's so heavy. For me, it was so dark. It was in those phases, knowing that I was guided by my brother and this one woman, that's a special story for another day. I knew that if somebody else was going through what I was going through without guidance, they'd probably want to kill themselves. I mean, that's how dark it is. This isn't like, oh, let's go and sit with triggers and da-da-da. No, this was like, well, the first 6-7 months was relentless. Relentless. Trigger process, fatigue for weeks, awake, lively for a couple of days, bam, straight back in, mother wound, bam, straight back in, process after process after process. And if you're genuinely meeting it, like I said, in my own experience and from this other web page that I found, fatigue is a major part of the integration process. And there are many interpretations of it. So it's just I'm talking about this at length so that people realize if they genuinely sit with their stuff and then find themselves to be seriously tired and hypersensitive, that's what leads to a transformation and restructuring in your life. Because you can't behave how you were before. You can't put yourself in the same situations where you were before. You can't live like that anymore. A lot's going to change. That's why it's called transformation. Yeah, it's not easy. It's tricky.
I would say part of what makes it tricky is also that you don't have to do this work. It's like totally optional. And when these uncomfortable and sometimes deeply uncomfortable feelings come up, you don't have to sit with it you can escape. You can distract yourself, and we live in a world also where today you have 1,001 ways that you can distract yourself from what's happening internally. So I'm wondering, when you were going through these processes, very, very painful, very disruptive, and were you not, how did you stay with it rather than escape when it was always a choice for you to escape it?
I couldn't move. So I was in my bed most of the time. The best times when I was truly with myself were the evenings. And the mornings I would just wake up and go, ugh, and just stuff my face with comfort breakfast. But I wasn't even unhealthy. But I'm not going to lie, it was bloody intense. So I would just stuff my face with toast and peanut butter and honey, but all organic products, all healthy, cinnamon and bananas. And then I'd just go back into bed and just lie there and curl up and just be with myself, just curl up. Like, you can't escape it. It's like a heavy blanket on top of you. I was so sensitive that my awakening started January 17, middle of January 2017, and it was cold. All my windows were closed, but you get a sound from the other side of the street, like these camera doorbells, dong 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 dong. They make this arpeggio. They have the doorbell noise outside the house now, which defeats the object. And that sound of a doorbell would make me jump out of my skin, right? And you're just lying there, curled up, you in this hypersensitive, exposed state. And then when I would balance a little bit more, like I wasn't so, I would start researching. I read more articles on the mind and healing and awakening and watched videos on it. I was so intentional. I said, what's going on? And I educated myself in that time. It was like an awakening university for me. And I leveled up my mind to understand what is awakening, what is healing, what is the ego, how does it all function? And now, let's say, 10 years later, I'm somewhat of an expert. I can recite that stuff, and I've internalized that information to a level where I can see how the ego operates, how the mind operates in a fraction of a second in somebody's behavior. So yeah, use the time. Use it wisely. Maybe to answer your question, just getting the evenings I was better at it. The evenings I would take a really, really hot bath, and then I would put meditation music or healing vibrational music from YouTube. I turned my room into a cave, by the way. That's probably the answer you wanted. I turned my room into a blackout cave with psychedelic lighting, very gentle, and put meditation music and just lay down on my floor, breathing, stretching, writing, doing oracle cards. At the time, I did some rapé sometimes, but I'm not into it anymore. So my evening routines and rituals were probably the healthiest. My morning, not so great, but the middle of the day full of research. And then I would go for a walk. And then, yeah, a hot bath that would take me inwards, like a sauna. And then just lie on my floor for some hours until I was ready to sleep, and just do it again and again and again, day after day after day after day. Yeah, it was pretty intense. I lost a lot of muscle mass, could barely move.
Mm. And this is a process that just you didn't deliberately go into it. This is just something that life took you by surprise with.
That's the weird story about the woman I wanted to tell you about. But I don't know if it's a good idea to share it publicly, but there are some weirdos out there, and I would need to devote pretty much a whole podcast just to her and her influence in my life. And yeah, everybody wants to meet that spiritual teacher, that guide, that shaman, that guru. How about just a normal woman with extraordinary powers? Because she's what's it called when you archaeologist. She's not running around posing as a spiritual teacher, but she has abilities that she cultivates that are otherworldly. And everything shifted after I met her. This integration period that I'm talking about where I couldn't move. The first one was after my first meeting with her in Thailand, and we just met in a restaurant with my ex and this woman. It's a great story, but I don't want to be so vulnerable today. We went to her place for lunch about a
Sure.
week later. We went to her place for lunch about a week later. I fell asleep the moment I got to her house. It was 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I just fell asleep out cold for an hour. When I woke up, they were both called Julia. So my ex was Julia and this woman was Julia. They looked almost identical. This was a crazy. I meet them. I'm looking at blah blah blah. She turns around. Yeah, so my name's Julia. Her name. I was like, okay, this is getting a bit weird now. So a week later, we're in her house. I fall asleep. I wake up. They've prepared an amazing lunch. And after the lunch, the woman, Julia, not my ex, looked at me for an hour, talking. I was going through hot flushes, sweating. I could feel heat rising through me. As it was going through me, she was telling me what she was seeing, and it was exactly what I was feeling. And she was saying, but you've taken a lot of good steps, and now you're going to take massive steps, much bigger steps. So I'm thinking about my music career. I'm thinking now I'm going to be a famous musician because that was all my ego wanted. Left her place. A couple of days later, I don't remember exactly, I became an absolute zombie. I had my first integration period. We're talking 2015 or 16. I was in Thailand. I was in Pai, in, I think, Bansabai guest house. I don't think it exists anymore. I was for 6 days unable to talk, walk anywhere, laugh. I was fully healthy, but I didn't have energy to give. I'm just like out. For 6 days, totally out. I didn't know what the hell was going on. I could eat, I could communicate, but there was no essence. I was just out. Full moon came, and it was a weekly or bi-weekly meditation in the Good Life. It's a cafe in Pai called the Good Life. And I think the guy's name was Ralph. You'd go upstairs and do this guided meditation, the easiest guided meditation of your life, and short. This particular day, half the group had already left, and no one ever left. Personally, I had a lot of inner noise, and I opened my eyes and realized half of them were gone. So I've got to go. So I went back to my hut, and I laid down on my hut, on the bed in my hut, and an unbelievable amount of thoughts and noise going off in my head. I was just like, what is this noise? And I've always known how to observe thoughts. I was 30 something and I woke up at 20. So my awareness of these things is pretty good. But this was off the charts. So after 6 days of not being able to move, talk, laugh, just alive, I go to this meditation. I'm feeling all this stuff. I lie down in my hut, all of this noise, and then suddenly a voice, and I've only had a clear voice in my head maybe 6 times in my whole life. My mum was schizophrenic, so paranoid schizophrenic, whatever you want to call it. She had voices all the time that I used to work with her with those voices, asking her what they're saying and understanding it all. So my mum had voices permanently, but I've only had voices 6 times, very short, very clear. And this voice, the moment that noise, it just, you shouldn't have children until you fix the shit your parents gave you. It was so bloody clear. And I just sat up like this. It's like, what? And my process was over. I was human again. I could function again. So that was the first time I had an integration period. And it was directly after having a meal with this woman that had abilities, energetic abilities, which to the best I can understand is that her vibration was so high that by connecting with her, it pulled me up to another vibration that now I had to work back up to that. I had to shed everything that was keeping me lower. I had to let go, process, resolve everything that was keeping me beneath that vibration that I had reached with her. That to get back there, I had to drop and process and resolve all of that baggage. And I was activated, right? I was activated by that woman. So my awakening came through the vision, the insight of somebody that does this daily when she meets people that are spiritually ready for a massive leap. So no, I don't believe my awakening just happened by itself. I believe this woman, through her abilities, and again, I'm being very careful sharing this story. This is my life journey. This is my experience. It happened Pi 2000, I think it was 15 or 16 at like January, February. And then a year later, or however long it was, I found myself at home in England starting to go through these processes. And I wrote to her and I said, is metamorphosis always this painful? So she knew now it had begun, and she called me immediately from the States. And she guided me once or twice a year for like an hour or two on Skype. She didn't mother me. But right at the beginning, when I was like, after a couple of weeks of process, and I was like, what the fuck's going on? This is not normal. I wrote to her saying, is metamorphosis always this painful? And she guided me and to help me understand what the hell's going on. So, yeah, my awakening was thanks to this woman's presence in my life, but I had already done a fair amount of work by myself before I met her. So yeah, that's a very personal story, and I limited it. I didn't share all the details, but that's a good chunk of it.
Okay. Well, I will share a little bit personally from my experience, because I think it might be helpful to people who are watching the podcast. So personally, my experience with this work has been, I have found that when I meditate daily, after a few weeks, I find feelings come out of nowhere, seemingly, and this, what I can only describe as heavy energy, comes up, not triggered by any particular person on a particular day, but it will just come up. And in my life, since I've started kind of diving into this, I've had periods where I've been meditating and then not meditating, and meditating
Sure.
and not meditating. So I've noticed when I start the meditation, after a couple of weeks, I know what I'm getting into, and I know that the deeper layers of this this pain, but not pain, as you were saying, comes up. I found it very, very difficult to stay with it. At
Sure.
first, it's been okay. I've stayed with it, but the challenge I found has not even been the level of discomfort. Of course, it's been uncomfortable and sometimes really uncomfortable, but the most challenging thing I found has been the ego, the mental program,
Resistance, just resistance. One word, resistance.
resistance. Yeah, exactly. And I found that it has come up with a plethora of excuses of why actually it would be better to do X and Z, and ultimately to go back to a coping mechanism which cuts essentially. It feels like it stops this entire process, because as soon as I've gone back into coping mechanisms, this stuff doesn't come up anymore. I feel way less. The suppressed material or whatever
Sure.
just stays underneath the surface. So what could you say about that? About not allowing yourself to be manipulated by your mind and to just stay the course and stay with
Yeah.
whatever's coming up.
I forgot to say I was meditating a lot those days. I was remembering that it was actually effortless for me to do longer meditations when my pain was super heavy and deep. Everything was so heavy and sleepy that just closing my eyes for 45 minutes and sitting there, now I would find it 20 times harder, for example. So to answer your question, we have to become really, really aware of our resistance patterns. So we have resistance patterns in dynamic, and we have resistance patterns with ourselves. And then you're going to, like you said, you described how we rationalize it. That's just a mental story. That's not real. The fact is, the ego sees this emotion or feeling state as a threat to the identity. You blocked it as a child to survive. So if you're trying to sit with it, the ego is going to create resistance, saying, what are you doing? You could die. It thinks you're falling off that cliff. It thinks you're jumping out of the plane without a parachute. The ego does self-preservation. It does survival. So the more you can, a little pep talk to yourself, talk to your mind. So I can see you. I don't need protecting from this anymore. If you have them inner critic always talking negatively to you, it's trying to keep you small to survive because your parents didn't understand you. Talk to your inner critic. I don't need protecting anymore. Talk to your resistance. I don't need protecting anymore. I'm good. Talk to your feelings. Like, I can feel you. I want to feel you. I love you. I can even, like, I could just curl up on my side, talking to myself like I'm talking to a 3-year-old with all that care and love and presence. Just super gentle voice, like, I'm with you, Ramsey. I love you, Ramsey. We're good. I've got your back. Even yesterday, I did a guided somatic breathwork thing, which is part of a detox program I'm doing. And yeah, in one of the breath holds, we had to connect with the inner child. It's like, oh, that's a cool place to do inner work because you're so high on the breath work. It's like almost psychedelic. And I just speak to yourself. You've got to transform that inner voice into something that's conscious, that it can see. That's what consciousness is. I can see my resistance. I can see my self-preservation reaction. I can see my coping strategy. I can see my avoidance. I can see my projection. And then not let it dominate your reality. That's the point. To choose consciousness, to choose what's the right thing for me right now. And that's okay. If I'm triggered, it's do nothing. Breathe, hands on the body, lie down. I can go through this. I can own this. I can be with it. If it's just a little bit discomfort, like you're feeling off balance, not grounded, not centered, then go for a walk barefoot, or just sit in a park and listen to the birds and the trees. Just ground, center. What's the correct option? But allow a little bit of self-abandonment in your day. I scroll. I don't have like the perfect day routine. I have had, and I tell you what destroyed it was success on Instagram. It's the amount of time I've had to put into that app to maintain my channel, to make bookings. I didn't have to do any of it, but I found that I had no discipline. That success, the surge, it's all slowed down a lot now. Probably everyone's on holiday. But it exposed a whole load of new wounds. So everything I'm teaching to you today or to others or sharing, it's to a point, right? But what's the whole point of healing, Orlando? What's one of the points of healing? Let's get you interactive. What's one of the main points of,
Sure. Greater freedom, I would say.
like another one?
Well, you are changing your relationship with yourself, which is then changing the relationship you have with the world.
It's a single word.
You're
It's a
alchemizing.
single word. It's a single word I'm looking for. I don't want your opinions. I want to get this particular thing.
The benefit of healing.
One word. What
Growth.
is the spiritual growth? Another word for growth?
Ascension.
Just this one.
Transcendence.
No, that would be that one. Some transcending, but there's a particular word, expansion. You said growth, so I'll give that to you. It's expansion.
All right.
And what I've seen with my healing and awakening journey, I went from somebody that had very little money, that didn't give a damn about money, lived in a van, I street performed, I was an independent professional artist. I lived on less than 12,000 euros a year. I had loads of addictions, loads of issues, but I also had the best life on the planet. I absolutely loved it. But I was a mess. The healing and the awakening journey came, the awakening process started. I went through these motions, processes, and every certain like 4 or 5 months, you go back out into the world and you're like, who the hell am I now? It's like it's identity crisis. And you have to reshape your life, reshape your life. And there were many years of rebuilding, right? Before I saw any sort of shape in my life. There's years of restructuring and rebuilding, right? So let's say the first 2 years were just deconstructing, process, trauma, process, trigger, right? And then I remember from January 2019 until September, nothing happened, zero. I just got my life going again, but in a completely different way, more connected, morning routine, connected to myself. And then I was like, things have gone a bit quiet. And then my mum would die, right? I was quite clear that I hadn't had a single process in 9 months. And then boom, I was in Thailand. I went to do a detox, and then I was doing all the right things out there, but something didn't feel right. And my dad called me, your mum's got a brain tumor. Now that was the next year and a half of process. Massive journey for me. I did not welcome death very well at all. I resisted it. I had 2 burnouts. Yeah, major, showing us how much we hold on, how much we control. I did not handle that well at all. And that was during COVID as well. That was a rough time. Let me get the thread back. So now, some years in, rebuilding, just following that feeling, that vision, that idea. Write a book. Okay, I'm going to write a book. Every morning I would do my breath work, meditation, walk, ice cold shower, make a cup of tea and sit at my desk and start writing. Nobody watching, nobody patting my back, just trust the vision. I was guiding a lot of people when I had moments. I'd been guiding for 17 years before my awakening had started. And I developed abilities to see and connect spiritually, emotionally, and seeing how the ego operates, navigating the ego past all its defenses into the truth of the person, the pain behind the movie. I became so good at that, I said, I have to write a book on this. And for years, all I did was just show up. And then last November, I started making Instagram videos. And now I've done 4 podcasts. I've done 150, 200 one-to-one calls. I've got 200 and something videos. But we're talking about expansion. Each expansion reopens the wounds. That's the point. So where I thought I didn't need validation, where I thought I wasn't people-pleasing, where I thought I'd processed a lot of guilt, where I thought I'd processed OCD, suddenly, now with Instagram, I was people-pleasing everyone that wrote me a message. Abandonment moods as well. The number of people that got to the point of payment and ghosted. I'd never dealt with ghosting before in my life until Instagram took off. I lived in a very beautiful way of life, countryside, nature, Spain, Canary Islands. I had nothing to do with the madness of the internet at all. To suddenly be thrown into it and to see that I still have abandonment wounds, majorly, people pleasing, guilt, like, am I allowed to even make money like this? So the point is, each time you do your healing and your work, if you expand, and you will expand, maybe financially, maybe a partner, maybe a business, you have to redo all the balancing that got you there again and again and again, or you're going to lose your head. You're going to fall back into old patterns. You're going to get comfortable. Each expansion needs you to apply the same integration techniques, awareness, and consciousness that you did to get there. Because it doesn't matter how conscious you are, how much you heal, you can still fall down that ladder very quickly. Very quickly. So we're never healed. If you hear people saying healed, they don't know what they're talking about. Because each expansion will require rebalancing. Because expansion is not easy. And you're going to realize just how, for me, for example, why I lived without responsibility for so many years. Because I didn't have capacity for responsibility. So I looked like the freedom traveler beach guy. But just going through these expansions of the last years, it's been rocky. It's been really, really rocky. Really challenging.
You mentioned in a video ego deaths. Well, ego death, the concept of an ego death, and how there's a bit of a misconception that there is an ego death that you can experience that people seek out. And you say that really it's just a series of ego deaths that continue to come. You're continually experiencing an ego death. I wanted to include this in the podcast because maybe you can highlight just how strongly the ego will resist, and so people understand that really it's gonna feel like a type of death to welcome
jumping off the cliff.
These
like
things.
I said, jumping off the cliff every single time. Every single time you're stepping out of resistance, stepping out of self-preservation. So the people that want an ego death want an escape from their pain. They don't want to go on the healing journey. This is the spiritual ego. I don't know if there is anybody on the planet that genuinely had an ego death where there's just no sense of self, because the ego is the sense of self. It's like, I'm here, I exist, these are my limits, this is my edge, this is my defense to keep myself alive. To say no ego, that's like removing the brain from the head and saying that human's still alive. It's like the spiritual brain. It's your focus of the soul's energy through the ego that creates your personality, creates your personal narrative, creates your worldview. So when people say they want an ego death, what they're saying is, I don't want responsibility for my pain, to transcend the ego. Because if there's no ego, there's no me. If there's no me, there's no history of me. And if there's no history of me, there's no pain. So they want a way out. That's the spiritual bypass. So I just want transcendence. I just want ego death. That's why I made that video. I can't remember exactly what I said. It was something like, I had an ego death. Well, congratulations. Good luck for the next 300. Because each time you do something that goes against the ego's defense mechanisms that are protecting a part of you, i.e. keeping your mouth shut, if you actually speak up, you get over your fear of conflict, that's an ego death. When you say no, when you were somebody who was afraid to say no, and you stand up there and you feel your body trembling, that's an ego death. Because you're jumping off the metaphorical cliff. The ego wants you to stay on top of the cliff and not say no. Saying no was dangerous. Mum and dad punished you. So you become a people pleaser, a fear of conflict. So if you do the opposite of that, it's an ego death, because you've jumped off that metaphorical cliff jump. And the better you get at that, the less it bothers you. For years, my brother said, I've got observations. Would you like to hear them? And I'd just say, hit me. Tell me. I can take that hit. I can take the stomach turning upside down. I can take the guilt. I can take the shame. You can hammer my personal narrative with love, in safety. I will hear anything about me and my behavior from most people that present it lovingly, like it's safe. It's not an attack. And I will say, just hit me. Tell me. That's how I grow. And also from, no matter how much you think the other person was wrong, look at yourself. Look at yourself. Because you're dismantling your ego every single time. I'm not perfect. You would say, I did everything right. I'm so spiritual. There's always more you can see. So for me, the ego is about expanding it, like letting its defenses down, looking at yourself. And if it's really uncomfortable, that's the ego death. That's the part the ego was trying to protect you from. If somebody out there succeeded in totally transcending the ego, I'd love to hear about it. Pretty sure they'd be full of shit. Pretty sure. Because it tends to be a persona. It tends to be an act. It tends to be a very well-oiled story. And I would just love to see them go home with their family and sit around the table and how they communicate with their parents. Because that's, as Eckhart Tolle said, if you think you're enlightened, go home and spend a week with your family. Well, I can spend a long time with my father. We get on so, and he used to be my worst enemy. I used to hate him. And we transformed all of that. So there are many paths to awakening. There really are. There's Kundalini awakening. There's this, there's that. There's all sorts. I didn't have any of that. I went through process after process of very heavy and dark stuff. And each one of them is an ego death. Because the person that was being protected doesn't exist anymore. Because that person resisted those feelings. So if you stop resisting them, that part of you dies. Ego death, ego death, ego death. Who am I now? Identity crisis, identity crisis. Total restructuring of your life, of your personality, of your likes, of your dislikes, your authenticity. Yeah, so ego death, that's it. I never met a person that talked about ego death that had any credibility.
So it makes sense that you would experience intense resistance when you do whatever, when you lower your defense, when you dive into the feeling, because there's a part of you that if you are to continue doing what you're doing, open yourself up to someone, whether if it's like in dynamic, as you were saying, or if it's personal and you're just staying with what's coming up, then there's your ego knows that if you continue down this path, a part of it dies, can no longer exist, and therefore you're going to experience the level of intense resistance someone would have if you were trying to kill them.
No. No, the amount of horror. No, that's horror. No. Like when you see videos of people running out of a building that's on fire, you know, people die more from the stampede than the actual fire. Like when it comes to your physical self-preservation, like your body staying alive, I mean, just look at people like if I'm cycling on the road and somebody drives too close to me on the bike, I'm very reactive because that's the protection of my body. But if it comes to emotional interaction with my father, my brother, with people, I'm not so reactive anymore because I'm not afraid of the feelings. So to compare, the ego does do the survival of the body, the narrative, and the worldview, right? The narrative is the identity, the personal narrative. But no, you can't. Okay, maybe for some people they're going to feel a lot of terror in their processes. I can't speak for your experience or other people's experiences, but nothing I went through can. I've been scared for my life once or twice, right? Traveling, you make some mistakes some places. That fear is nothing like what you go through in an awakening process, healing process. So I can't attribute the same.
That's not what I mean. Yeah,
Go on then.
that's not what I meant. I didn't mean that if you do a process, then you're going to feel like you're dying. That's not what I mean. I meant the ego is protecting its identity, and if you dive into the feeling and you allow it to be, there's a part of the ego that dies. Therefore, the ego is going to create the level resistance, just like if someone tried to kill someone else.
No, it's not that intense.
They would have a lot of.
It's not that intense. That's what I'm trying to say. I am answering your question. It's not that intense. It's more like a distraction, a discomfort, at worst, chronic anxiety, depression, like this sort of states. As far as I'm aware, as far as I went through, but
Right.
It's not going to be on the level of somebody chasing you with a huge knife trying to kill you. That's extreme, because that's terror, and I didn't deal with any terror in my awakening journey. It was tough, very dark and very heavy. But yeah, I get what you're saying, but I think that's a little extreme. I think it's never that scary, but it's dark.
Mm-hmm.
It's dark. It shouldn't be underestimated, but it shouldn't be feared either. That would, if I said yes to that, then I would instill fear into people. It's not like that. It's not like that. It's heavy, it's dark, and it's intense.
Yeah.
But it's not. It's cool. You're a young, inquisitive man. I like your questions, but if we've got a delay, so I'm waiting for you to talk.
Maybe I was also phrasing it. Yeah, I'm also experiencing the same. But yeah, maybe I phrased it not the best, but I kind of just meant there's going to be a lot of resistance to doing this work internally, and I thought it might be good for people to know that, so they expect
it's
it,
more
so that
like
when the resistance comes.
Yeah, but the resistance is more like standing on the top of a top diving board of a swimming pool. It's more like that not wanting to jump from a great height into water.
Yeah.
It's more that kind of block, that more, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do this. It's more like that than being chased by somebody with a huge knife. Just to make that clear. But there will be anxieties, there will be intense feelings, but it's more like, oh fuck, I don't want to do that, rather than, that's to distinguish. But you're right. There's going to be fear, but it's not horror. It's not a horror movie.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, that's also nice to frame it that way. It's not a terrible thing. You're actually just connecting deeper with yourself.
Sure. But there's got to be
And there's
barriers and
some
barriers and
resistance.
barriers. Yeah, lots of resistance. But it's a good to ask that question because maybe people are like, because when you can't imagine something, again, the ego releases fear. So if I'm telling stories, for me, they're normal. For another person, it's going to trigger a lot of fear because it's going to trigger a lot of unknown. So it's important to ask that question. Yeah, like there are blocks, there's resistance, but it's not a horror movie. It's just heavy and dark.
I would like to ask you one last question.
Mm-hmm.
If you had one thought that you could leave to the world, what would it be?
You're walking around in the manifestation of your unconscious mind, meeting characters that reveal parts of you that are blocked and unintegrated, unresolved. And the more you point the finger, the more you know that you've met somebody who holds a message for you for your healing. So play the victim all you like. And then when you become conscious that you're playing the victim, reverse it. Make it about what am I contributing here? What is it I can see here? What is life wanting me to learn? How is life making me grow here? Because it's happening for you. It's always happening for you. And we didn't talk about the holographic universe, but your lived externalized reality is a holographic virtual reality projection of your unconscious mind. Okay? And the more you understand that, the more the external world becomes a reference point for your own awakening rather than a place to project all of your unconsciousness onto, which is the unconscious paradigm. The problems you're looking at individually and collectively are the visualization of your issue. So you're looking at what your issue looks like. So then people blame the issue like that's the problem. When it's a place of reference. That keeps appearing in my life. That means I'm the source, both individually and collectively. In a nutshell, that's, yeah. When the world understands that we understand that we're walking around within a visualization of our pain, of our problems, once you get that, it's just like you can't point the finger anymore. You can only grow, and you can grow so quickly. It's amazing.
Thank you very much, Ramsey, for coming onto the podcast. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Orlando.